Welcome to the Coach Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Keren. Settle in. We're about to make you feel really good. Welcome back to the Coach Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Keren, and we are still in a deep dive in the Coaching Masters series. I am so thrilled to welcome you here for interview after interview with masterful teachers and also with such varied teachings. I myself, like you, am a junkie. I'm a nerd. I'm obsessed with this stuff, and I just cannot get enough of not only learning about other teachers, but learning about what they teach and how they teach. And I think most importantly for me, why they teach. And today I could not be more thrilled to introduce you to today's coaching master, Nick Onken. Nick is a creative entrepreneur, a photographer, the host of Onken's World, the podcast, and he's known for iconic portraits of some of the biggest stars of our time, like my great love, the Biebs, Justin Bieber.
Biebs.
Global travel, and he also is the author of the philosophy of Identity Alchemy, into which I really hope we'll be taking a deep dive today. Nick helps people magnetize their personal brands and express who they are and not just what they do. I know the word authenticity gets thrown around a lot, but this guy really knows what he's talking about. So I truly hope that you tune in for a masterclass, because over the last 2 decades, Nick has not only photographed everyone from celebrities to spiritual leaders and collaborated with megawatt brands like Nike, but he's also built a movement around the idea that your identity is your greatest work of art. Nick, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
It is so nice to have you here.
Thank you. The identity is a work of art. I like that.
It is, isn't it?
It really is. It is.
It's an always evolving work of art. Mm-hmm. And right before you came on here, you and I chatted very briefly about a podcast interview that you loved of Madonna on the Jay Shetty podcast. By the way, if anyone has not watched that yet, it was highly
really
recommended.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Really good.
And I tell you why I loved it so much. Of course, being a middle-aged gay man, I'm obsessed with Madonna and have been since I was 8 years old. But I also really loved it because it was a student talking about her obsession with a particular school of thought and with teaching. And in that sense, that particular episode reminded me a lot of this show and of what we do here, which is just, why do we study? What do we study? How do we become interested in what we study? And how did our spiritual journey evolve?
Wow.
You grew up in Washington. You sketched Disney characters as a kid. Yeah. How do you go from there to spiritual teacher?
Spiritual teacher. Wow. That's a new title. I definitely been on a spiritual journey, and I did grow up in Seattle, Washington, and I grew up in a very conservative Christian upbringing, which never really resonated with me, even though I was cultured into it for 21 years. And then when I turned 21, I was just like, I got burnt out. I still had 1 foot in, 1 foot out, because they really the Christians really like to create this fear of hell, which gets embedded deep into the subconscious, especially if you've been brought up that way since I was born, really. So my journey's been a long unfolding one in terms of that. And then I started drawing and painting when I was in drawing Disney characters when I was in 8th grade, and then I went into high school and did AP art, which basically was like I had to do a class from each discipline, like sculpture, drawing, painting, commercial art, photography, design, stuff like that. And that's where I really allowed me to really dive into the artist space, because I definitely think there's a huge link and correlation between spirituality, consciousness, and creativity, as we are channels of consciousness to flow through.
1,000,000%.
Yeah.
You mind if I ask you some more specific questions then?
Yeah.
What happened at 21?
What happened at 21?
Did something turn you off?
Well, I think there was the whole way through, I felt like I was always trying to believe what my parents brought me up to believe, but there was something inside that just felt off.
Yeah.
It was I couldn't grasp a hold of whatever that was. And when I turned 21, I was literally, I was so in the church. I was doing stuff probably 5-6 days a week that was at the church or around the church. And I just hit this point, I just got burnt out.
Yeah,
And I
you
was like,
literally were like, this is too much.
this is too much. What am I doing? What is this? Like, why am I even, what does this all have to do with anything? And why am I following this path when I don't feel it really, really deep inside? So that spurred the journey to explore the outer world, which I was still 1 foot in, 1 foot out, because there was just like
Sure.
that subconscious fear of going to hell. Took 7 years to like deconstruct that identity piece and really be able to let go of that belief fully.
Yeah. It's very hard to break with one's family of origin and the beliefs with which you grow up. Carl Jung has called this the process of individuation. Gay Hendricks talks about it a lot in his
Yeah.
epic tome, The Big Leap.
Yeah.
But many of us subconsciously, we don't even allow ourselves to fully express ourselves, let alone to enjoy real success, because in our subconscious, we are afraid of breaking with the traditions that we broke up with, that we grew up with. And so what's happening to you is this is a 7-year process in which you're like, I don't really know where I'm going, but I'm kind of burned out on this and I'm done with this.
Yeah. And it was just this.
And this is when you start basically developing a creative career, because one of the things you did buy and you did get from your parents early on that I noticed in several of the threads that I've listened to of yours is that they did tell you to do what you love. They did encourage the artistry and the creativity.
Yeah, so that's like the other side of it. And I think through that, I really found who I was on the opposite side of that. And so it was really, they really did encourage me to do what I wanted and pursue what I wanted and what I enjoyed. And that was the arts. And then I started in graphic design. And then I picked up a digital camera kind of halfway through, or like a few years into my design career. And
When was that?
As I was 23 or so, and I started shooting for my design work. I had taken a couple of classes in high school and college on photography because they were part of the design program, but I never really did anything with it. And then I got the digital camera, started shooting for my design work, and that's where it sparked my interest in it. And then I convinced this nonprofit design client to split the expenses on a trip to Africa to build him a photo library. And that trip just like changed my life in 2 ways. It was experiencing the developing world for the first time and seeing and experiencing how other people live with nothing. And then also it opened my eyes to the world of photography and that people would actually pay me to travel around the world to take photos. And so that was kind of the exploration. Meanwhile, my own personal inner journey is unfolding through this.
Because your eyes are beginning to open. I love a couple of things about this. First, it's a beautiful story, and the photographs are breathtaking.
Thank you.
That you took back then. But the second is, I love how organically you pick up a digital camera, you really like it. I have a facility for it. I have an eye, and it just starts to take off. And then you literally start to see, wow, people are willing to pay me to do this. It reminds me of the story of a very wonderful guest we've had on the show, Jasmine Starr, today, a teacher herself.
Yeah.
And Jasmine essentially is like photography, and let's figure it out. You must have had that too, where you were like, I'm going to learn all about this and I'm going to develop this myself, and I'm going to get to the point where I'm actually employable in this.
Yeah. I didn't go to college for it. I took the classes, but that was just because they were part of the design program. But it was really just like, I'm going to learn this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to master it because I see the end. I know what I want to do.
Totally. And what'd you do to master it?
I started shooting my own work and just building my portfolio. And then I hired consultants to teach me about the business. And then I worked with other photographers that taught me really opened my eyes that it was actually a career. And
incredible.
Yeah. And it was just like, I'm going to build this. If I want to shoot commercial editorial work, I'm going to have to go and create a portfolio that people want that in there, want to hire me for that.
It's tremendous. It's reminding me just a little bit, not about the coaching business, but my speaking business. I remember still the first time someone paid me to show up, give a talk, and leave. And I thought, this is an unbelievable way to make a living. And before that, I truly had to learn the works, the ropes of designing a talk, creating the materials that will get the talk sold, developing the contacts that will actually put me on the circuit, and then end up as a professional speaker.
Yeah.
It's tremendous when anybody does anything of this magnitude. Now, you evolve And it took you quite some time to evolve, but I want to talk about like the inner evolution that brought you there first.
Yeah.
You often say on your podcast that there's a whole set of limiting beliefs that we grow up with that keep us from living to the fullness of our possibilities. I'm really glad to hear, first of all, that you're human. What were the limiting beliefs that did come up at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was limiting beliefs around being able to build the career, right? So I built the career, like I went on. So I ended up getting an agent in New York, and I started blowing up. I started doing like a lot more commercial work.
Yeah.
And I started shooting these, different magazines. And then, I think some of the limiting beliefs was, could I even do this? Do I have the, like,
almost like imposter syndrome?
Yeah. Imposter syndrome. Yeah. And then it gets into like more self-sabotage. Am I like burning out? Am I limiting myself? Speaking of Gay Hendricks, it was like, am I creating an upper limit on my own, with my own belief system?
Yes. Am I not able to literally grow myself because I'm subconsciously associating success with loss? And by the way, that's something that you also talked openly about that I loved was after, for example, Nike happened, which is a very large commercial success. By the way, a huge part of my story as well, work with Nike, is that afterwards, then you have a lull and you don't really know what to do in the lull because you almost have to reevaluate everything that got you here.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit? There are a lot of people who are not only solopreneurs, but also teachers out there, and they will experience the gamut of this. And my job here is to show them you're normal. It's cool. We all have this.
Yeah. I mean, that was a good space is because I got this job for Nike, and I was shooting all these pro sports players like Ben Roethlisberger. I didn't even know who they were. I had to Google them.
It's okay. I have no idea to this day.
Yeah, all these big sports players. I got the job, and I'm like, oh, I've made it. I'm a photographer now. Like, we're good. Like, everything's gonna start rolling in. Well, took 3 years later. I'm like, okay, so where's the jobs? Crickets. And I did a lot of other little things here and there, but I had thought once I got that job, I had made it, and I didn't. Like it takes a long time. You talk about the 10,000 hours that you have to put in to really master your craft and get your skills to that place. So there was this whole inner journey of like, okay, maybe I'm not. Maybe what's wrong with me? How come they aren't coming in? Like, where's the disconnect here?
You share this in common with many artists. There is something known as second album syndrome. I just read about it. I've been talking about this infinitely with anyone who will listen. I read a book called There's Nothing Like This about the ascent and ascent of Taylor Swift. Right. And they said that she sold 40,000 copies of her first album, and she literally was like, I have arrived. But unlike most artists who are definitely like obsessed with themselves and ready to go all the way to the moon, she already understood that for most people, the second album is therefore kind of set up to fail.
Right.
So she sort of hedged against that. And so many of us, many people listening, I hope, understand that, first of all, two things. There's no such thing as a rival. Sorry. And number two, if you are lucky enough to have one of your products, one of your efforts, one of your years take off, don't make that mean that you now have a clear runway, because there really is no such thing.
There really isn't. You never know. Like, it's up, it's down, it's left, it's right. The world changes. New technologies shift everything. That's what happened to so I dipped, and then things started to pick up around 2008. And then I got the agent. My career really took off. And then a few years later, around 2011, when social media came on the rise, like, that industry flipped, and my business just started crashing. And I started losing all these bids, like way more. Like, I would be used to getting 1 out of every 3 bids, and I lost like 20, 22, 23 bids in a row. And I was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And then, I went into a whole downward spiral mentally, because I didn't know, I couldn't distinguish myself to my art, to my business. Like, I thought that's what I was, right? And so that sent me into a really deep dark night my first dark night of the soul, of like, I didn't know anything. I didn't have any sort of mental awareness around any of this stuff, the ego or any of this. And then I I enrolled in this mastery and transformational training out in LA, which is I would say it's an emotional intelligence and leadership training, which is kind of the first layer for me. And
yes, it's a gateway drug.
It's a gateway. Yeah, a gateway drug. And then I really learned all these things. I learned that all of my self-worth was coming from who I was shooting and what I was shooting. And there was no, the attachment was so strong. I crashed in my business. I remember like I had a party, I had like 40 people at my house, and I was like downstairs in the bathroom crying because something happened, like something triggered, and I just felt worthless because of all this stuff that was happening. And so when I started doing this transformational training, it kind of helped me to pull that stuff apart and be like, oh, my worth doesn't come from who I'm shooting and what I'm shooting. That's just the expression. So
I love that you're sharing this. Thank you so much. How old were you at 2011?
I was probably 20. Oh, no, I was 33.
You had a midlife crisis at 33. Do you know how many people are experiencing this very likely who are listening to this right now? The age of AI completely obliterating entire industries. 2011, the magazine industry, for example, starts to begin to experience a natural slump.
Yep.
This was the beginning of the industry shift. We didn't see what was coming 10 years down the line.
Right.
But we could have. And so what you had was enormous luck to experience it about 10 years before everybody else was about to experience it. And now so many people will relate to the pain that you're expressing. I want to tell a tiny little story about a TV show that I've been obsessed with for a long time. Not one that our mutual friend, Caitlin Gerhardt, is obsessed with. Shout out to Caitlin. And if you have not watched her episode yet, you have to. She's amazing. And it's called Frasier. Frasier was a big sitcom in the 90s and early 2000s. There's an episode in which Frasier loses his job and he collapses in a deep depression. And the reason is told to us by his brother, Niles Crane, who is also a psychiatrist on the show, that both characters are psychiatrists. And he says, for people who are overly identified with what they do, the loss of employment registers to the soul as a death. You grieve as if you had died. So that sobbing was not random. The good part about it, though, and that's why I think it goes hand in hand with the fact that you then start to literally go inward and seek answers, is you had the fortitude and the inner knowing that it's time to look for a better God.
Yeah. It was I call it following the thread of magic. Even though I didn't know where the magic was, I was still, moving inward and one of my friends, Lewis, do you know Lewis Howes?
Of course.
Yeah. So he's been a good friend of mine, and he had like skipped Summit Series to do this leadership training. And I was like, wow, it must be really good if he skips Summit Series.
If he's going, he's got to be doing
and he skips the Summit Series weekend. So I enrolled, and that's how I kind of started going down that path. And it was just, it was really, really eye-opening just in the layers of how the mind even works, how you think, limiting beliefs, all these different things. It was like the first layer of that depth.
Yeah. You're also now highlighting the importance of having a mentor around or an expander around who just sort of opens the door for you.
Yeah.
It's sometimes people like Lewis, who is clearly an iconic figure in the self-development world, but in some cases, just like it was my buddy who, like I told you, dragged me to the Kabbalah Center by promising me that I might actually see Madonna there. That was basically it. And I said, I might see Madonna? Okay, I'll go.
Wow.
I didn't see Madonna.
How long ago was this?
It was in 2015.
Oh, okay. Okay.
In 2015, I walked into my first ever class.
Wow.
I, too, had just suffered an enormous dark night of the soul. Genuinely did not know who I was without my work.
Wow.
Genuinely didn't understand why the universe was closing doors in my face when I'd done everything right.
Yep.
And that was when everything started, man.
Wow.
It was a good time.
Yeah, it was a good time. That was around the time of my second dark night of the soul, and even.
Oh yes, that's another thing people should know. You don't get a one and done midlife crisis.
No, it keeps going.
And basically, it's gonna keep happening until you're basically done with the lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, I don't know where you are, but at what point does this turn into your philosophy of identity alchemy? And then at what point do you actually turn this into a platform, and how?
Yeah, so fast forward to the second dark night of the soul. I was in a relationship and was dating this woman, and we broke up. And I was the one that broke up with her, and even though there was still a grief there, but B, it just sent me into this dark night of the soul of like, what is the point of any of this? Why are we even here? I wouldn't say it was necessarily like a depression or like a suicidal piece. It was just like, what's the point? Like, we're all just like here existing.
Yeah.
And so I was in this, and it was
You moved
just,
into a nihilistic state.
yeah, and I didn't even know what a dark night of the soul was, and I ended up looking it up. Somebody told me, said something about it, and I looked it up, and I was like, oh wait, yeah, that's exactly how I feel. And it's just this like, there's like apathy. There's what's the point of anything? What am I doing? Like, you're just looking around, like trying to figure out what's going on. And so that was kind of the more spiritual dark night of the soul. And then I started, I did Bufo. And that was the first psychedelic I've ever done.
Psychedelic medicine, yes.
Yeah, and that just like sent me into the cosmos. And then I came back, and then I was like, really, what are we doing here? And so I was even a deeper dark night of the soul.
How interesting.
Yeah.
You know, most people have a different experience. They open up to themselves.
Right. Well, I think I tapped into the vastness of the cosmos,
Sure.
and it was like, because I was already in this, like, what's the point of anything here? When I went to this other cosmic space, I was like, wow, this is incredible. Why are we in this human experience, essentially? And then a few months later, I discovered breathwork. And then
We've talked to a breathwork master here. Truly life-changing
It
work.
really is. And I started doing it every day. And that's what, I was hitting similar states in the breathwork as I was that I did in the Bufo experience. And so that's what kind of started bringing me back to just a more equilibrium space. So a lot of that had to, it was like all these identities dying and being reborn. And then a few years later, I started kind of looking back at all the different pieces and the processes that I was going through, and came up with the process of identity alchemy, which is kind of this deconstruction phase of deconstructing the identity that maybe feels out of alignment.
Sure.
And then curating a new identity of like, oh, what do I want to step into?
Yeah.
And then becoming that identity. And so that's kind of a correlation between like the personal brand and like the inner world meets the outer world through the personal brand. Because I started doing personal brand photography more than because I started doing the personal brand photography instead of the commercial work, because that commercial world has just kind of turned upside down.
Yeah, it's changed.
Yeah, Lewis asked me, he was doing a new website and asked me to do a photo shoot, and that's kind of what started that side of things. And so I really just pivoted more into that. And then I created the Identity Alchemy process to help entrepreneurs really align who they are on the inner world into the outer world, because your outer world is a reflection of what's going on inside.
It's so true. And it's such an interesting thing that you probably have such a keen eye and understanding because of your soulful approach to yourself. In other words, it's not like a regular person who's, I'm sorry to discard many agencies, just interested in presenting a persona that will be sellable.
Yeah.
It's about truly having the ability to observe the person, to find within them what is special, and to allow that to become the beacon.
Yeah, because, especially someone who's, a coach or speaker, author, entrepreneur, like now it's the personal brand is king. And so the more that I believe, the more that you can show and translate who you really are and share all aspects of who you are, people connect with that. People connect with people. So, I help people really translate who they are into the visual space, both with creative direction of the graphics and the photography. And so utilizing that process.
And so you create this offering, and then you create the podcast. By the way, I think it's going to be an even more successful period ahead. I just recently listened to one of Tom Bilyeu's episodes and personal perspectives on this that he published this year, 2025. And he said that the reason all of us are moving podcasts, for example, to the film space is because this is the experience of authenticity that people want. They want to share something intimate. They want to get to know you for real. They want you to be fully known to them. And so what you're doing is you're helping people to actually do that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I mean, especially with the AI, what's happening with AI, it's like you see all these like fake AI things and there's no humanism to it. You don't have the human element. It's like, oh, okay, that's cute. It's like kind of gimmicky, but I think more and more people are going to crave the actual human emotional connection.
Yeah.
And that's where we get to really like put that forth.
I agree. And so when do you start, how do you develop the business?
And
the podcast and et cetera, How do you take off in this dimension?
How does one like anybody to do that?
Sure, you can tell listeners how they could do that, but share through your example.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think really I've been ideating this like triangle of you have brand, content, and service. So the quality of service has to be exceptional. And then you have to have the brand of credit that creates authority. So like that really represents who you are, so that when you create content, it drives people to your brand, and that's the perception, right? The content is where you really draw people in. So teaching on camera, face to camera, teaching, answering people's questions. Because when people are watching you on YouTube or Instagram talking to camera, you're spending time with that person.
That's
so
right.
You're creating a parasocial relationship with your audience so that people get to know you and builds rapport. So by the time they come into your world, then they're connected to you.
I completely love that. So what you're essentially saying is I figured out what the 3 pillars are, and then I started to understand that there was a methodology behind that and how they worked together. And this starts to inform method.
Yeah. This informs the method.
And the podcast is to open people up to the work?
Yeah, so I would say like podcasts and YouTube are kind of like in the same camp.
Sure.
It's content, and that's what connects people to you. I mean, I would say YouTube, because it's searchable, it's different than a podcast like platform, but you can basically just take your YouTube audio and put it into podcast, or video and put it into podcast. You can use it interchangeably, but it's really, the idea is like getting long format content out there.
Totally.
So that people can hear you, feel you, understand you, and connect with you. And then that brings them into your world.
Yeah.
I mean, you've experienced this.
For sure.
That's why we're doing this here.
Yeah,
too.
I know. And I was just saying, like, video killed the radio star again. In other words, I know the first time that's the first song, by the way, that was ever aired on MTV. For anyone who's very young, MTV used to be a music television channel. And it was when video goes on TV that people stop listening to the radio. And I think that that's what's happening now with YouTube. They're just consuming their content through the device that also comes with visuals, which is tremendous news once again for you.
Yeah.
That's very, very hard to fake. And it's tremendous to also have like a really big thing about it. So now it's about creating your life as art for anybody who is listening, who feels stuck, who doesn't entirely see, and most people can't see that they're trapped in an identity.
Right.
What would you suggest are the first steps? And then also the person who's actually already interested in building something, what are the first steps?
Yeah, I mean, I would say your life is art and your identity is art. Think of it as the Monopoly piece that's going around the board. You get to design it however you want.
Yeah.
So you design from your aesthetics to the way that you operate, who you're being, I think the who you're being, which comes down to inner work and like the inner personal development work, that gets amplified or it emanates into who you're being in the world. That's the first piece. And then you get to consciously create what it is, whatever you want to create in your life. Like that's the biggest piece, is being able to take responsibility for what you're creating. That's the core piece.
To make conscious choices.
Yeah.
I really love it because it's very law of attraction. And what you're saying, it reminds me a lot of when I started my transformation post 2015. Some of the decisions I made, I never really thought they were of much consequence, but it turns out they were enormously of consequence. For example, I moved from Dumbo to the Upper East Side.
Wow.
And we all know the difference. The Upper East Side is boring AF, but it's also rich AF. It's very elegant. It's very clean. It's aesthetically a particular way. I was making a branding choice, whether I was aware of it or not, and I think I was quite aware of it.
Right.
And then all of the other aesthetic choices were also beginning to inform just a new way of seeing self and a new way of being in the world. So those are a couple of practical things that people can start to do.
Yeah.
Move on up in your choices, make more deliberate choices.
Yeah. I say curate your space. I have this idea where you like in your house, your apartment, how do you beautify the space to inspire you to do different things? How do you curate the space so that it allows you to be like, oh, I've got to pick up that instrument and play it. Or I want to make that food or whatever's art. Food is art, cooking is art, living is art. Like what is how do you create your space so that it's easy, it makes it accessibly easy to do.
It also reminds me of the actor's idea of committing to the role.
Yeah.
Like a lot of them say that once they're in the costume, they can really move as the character. So it really does affect us psychologically enormously as we're trying to construct something new for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our friend Caitlin Gerhardt and I, one of the trash shows that we love, and make no mistake, they are trash, is The Gilded Age on HBO.
Right.
Once those people are in insane costumes, they for sure are these outrageous characters. It's kind of hard to do if you're in jeans.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's tremendous. Speaking of the evolution, I also want to say, I think reinvention right now, based on everything we've talked about, maybe in 2011, you and I still had maybe a couple of like false hopes that things would go back to normal, but that's just it's not a possibility anymore. Reinvention is the name of the game. So you've said for quite some time that you evolve or you evaporate. What does personal evolution look like in this era?
I think that you have to learn how to pivot. You have to learn how to, if something's not working, if an industry is changing, you have to figure out a new way of doing things or a new way of operating. For me, I was in the commercial photography world, and that space started to dissolve. It just wasn't worth working in. So I pivoted and reinvented in the personal brand space. And now all of this stuff that we're talking about has come from that pivot. And who knows what's going to happen in 3 to 5 years with AI. I mean, who knows if photography is going to be around? Maybe it will. I think there's still a space where the personal brand is king, right? So you can do anything you want under the personal brand. You can start new projects. You can pivot what you're talking about. You can pivot what you're doing, what you're creating. You can write a book. You can create a new business. And, as long as you're building your name and your personal brand, you can really utilize that as a platform.
I completely agree. So there are two really important things I think that you're saying here. The first is pivot with enthusiasm. I read in Inc. magazine not a couple of weeks ago that elder millennials and lower Gen Xers, also known as Xennials, we can expect to pivot our careers 3 times in this lifetime. For anyone younger than that, it's 7 times in this lifetime. So it's no longer a question of if you'll pivot, you will, and it's how often will you pivot. The second thing that I love that you're saying is personal brand is such an enormous asset. And I truly believe that it gives you that edge that is inimitable anywhere else. So anyone out there who feels called to develop one, it's going to be well worth your while.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say one thing too, is like everything you do in life will lead to you can use it for the next thing.
Yeah.
Everything I've done, like whatever I've done before I use it in everything that I do. The graphic design career, now I'm creative directing.
Exactly.
I design my own stuff sometimes. Now I hire designers, but I think when you do pivot, utilize your path. Your path is your journey and your story, and that's makes up who you are, which makes up your personal brand. It makes you uniquely you, which is what we all need.
2 tremendous things you're saying are nothing is wasted. Everything can be brought forward. Your skill set is never expendable. You can just keep evolving it. And the second is follow the magic thread.
Yep. Absolutely.
A tremendous, tremendous conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the show and for talking to us today, Nick. I've enjoyed this more than words can express. If you have enjoyed this episode, I truly hope that you subscribe to our podcast here on YouTube or on Apple or on Spotify, wherever you're listening. We thank you so much for joining us every single week. We can't wait to bring you more and more of the best teachers in the world. And it's been an absolute privilege to introduce you to Nick and his work. Everything will be linked below. We're going to see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was
All right.
awesome. Awesome.
Thank you.
What a great conversation.
Yeah.